Hi, welcome to another episode of Reflections. I'm your host, Deontay Brewer. Today is a special show. Instead of me interviewing a special guest, I will be the subject of the interview by my cousin Shanisha. Say hello, Shanisha.
Hello.
So today, you, the viewers, will get to find some lighthearted things about me as well as some probing, serious questions and responses. As always, I thank you all for watching. Thank you all for supporting. Remember to be bold, be you, be blessed. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer, for having me on the show. If you would, please tell me, how did you get started with Reflections?
Actually, several years ago, I would say about 5 years ago, here at the library, I came back into Access Fort Wayne, and I I kind of I was telling personnel that I was interested in, hosting a show, and I was put in contact with a staff member, and I met with the staff member, and I began telling him, my vision for the show and what I wanted to accomplish, and he gave me, the necessary paperwork, and we discussed ideals, but I mean, it stopped there. It stopped there. It was about 2017, and for about 2 years, 2.5 years, I had the vision. I knew what I wanted to do, but I just didn't go anywhere. Life got in the way, and I got really busy, and so I would say the latter part of 2019, I again came back to the library, and I reconnected with the staff member, and Reflections was born. We start throwing out ideas for shows, and in February 2020, I shot my first show. So it's been 2 years, and I've been having a blast.
That's wonderful. And so it sounds like you had a setback or so. And so, what advice would you give to someone who becomes discouraged or suffering from a setback? Because you said, you got started and then nothing happened. So, what would you say to someone?
I would say, just, continue to keep your vision, your goals in front, at the forefront, of your thoughts. And, you have to work at your own pace and just keep going. For me, I always knew, as you know, that I love to talk and I love to ask questions. And I always wanted to have a talk show that I hosted, whether it was me talking about issues that's important to me or interviewing guests as you're interviewing me today. And so I knew, that the vision was going to come to pass. I just had to really buckle down and get serious about it. And I recall the staff member telling me, you have the vision and the ideas, the ball is in your court. You're the one that has to decide when you want to do this. We can help you. We have the tools here to help you, but you have to decide. And so by 2019, I was ready. And, we put the show together, and we started taping, like I said, in early 2020.
In 2020. And so here we are on Reflections, and you mentioned vision. So in 5 years, what is your vision for Reflections?
I I would hope that the viewers, my vision actually, I would say I want to expand this. I want to expand my brand. I just recently graduated from college with my bachelor's degree. I'll be walking next month. And I'm going to eventually embark upon a master's degree. And I'm going to study, part of that will be media and communication studies. And so I definitely would love to have like a local talk show, and I want to eventually become like a correspondent for CNN or, like a pop culture, some type of, pop culture show, where I give my own, insight, and I want to have a talk show, where, I interview people because as like I said, I've been asking questions and talking since, years and years ago when family and friends are just practice, and so through this show and me speaking on societal and cultural issues as well as interviewing people, I've already gathered the skills. I'm a natural, but education, learning, the studies that communication, it'll help you, and continuing. So I definitely want to get a portfolio together, and I need to actually start a YouTube channel, first, but I want to get my best shows together and eventually send in a tape somewhere and, go from there.
Well, it sounds like you have a wonderful foundation and 5-year plan for Reflections. And so, with that being said, can you tell me one thing that you've learned about yourself from your viewers within your hosting duties?
I've had, viewers have given a lot of great feedback. People always tell me that I'm very knowledgeable, on topics. And sometimes I think that, I'm just talking. I really don't. It's hard for me to, I am knowledgeable, but I don't think of it that way. I just know that, things that I'm passionate on, I take the time to read and learn about. And so a lot of people, I've had work colleagues, tell me, oh my God, I didn't know that about this topic. Or, my mother, will always say, I learned something new about this. And so I really take the time to learn, before I begin speaking about something. I want to know the facts. I want to know the origin, I want the material to be factual and complete before I put it out on the air, and so I prepare for the show, and I've learned that I'm knowledgeable about things, certain things, different things, and so the viewers, I always say I always appreciate their feedback, and their criticisms, because it helps me get better as I continue to develop.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you've done several episodes on Reflections.
Yes.
Can you tell me your favorite episode and your least favorite episode?
So 20 I've done, I think this is a 21st or 22nd. My favorite episode would be the first one, the inaugural episode in February. I started off speaking about the death of Kobe Bryant and how that just not only touched the sports world, but all over the world. And I, remember Kobe Bryant as a teenager, him embarking into the NBA. And I remember thinking, oh, this is neat, a young black guy who seemed, really humble and nice, and he came from a good family. And I remember Brandy Norwood, taking him to the prom, and Brandy was really hot at that time in the 90s. And but then, as time went on and he, became the star that he was, I didn't follow him much. I remember the scandal, with he and his wife. And, but what I really began to tap in is that it was I think it was a movie he did. And I can't recall what it was about, but it was about, oh no, it was about his career. And he was inspiring children to dream, and he used his life and career as an example. And so I was like, this guy was just more than an athlete, and that's what really, outside of the championship rings, and, that is what really, touched me. And then to hear that he was with his daughter, when he perished. And so that was the first show I began talking about that. And I didn't have each show of Reflections, I have a topic in mind. We just started just filming, and I began speaking on just talking off the cuff, as we say. And so that also is my highest rated show. But I talked about him, and then I talked about, it was a show on MTV called Fanatic years ago, where everyday people would get to meet their favorite celebrity. And I just imagine, me interviewing my favorite celebrity. And I talked about how if I had this opportunity 25 years ago, how I would have made a tape, and I would have sent it to Fanatic in, New York, and I would have interviewed my favorite celebrity. And, then colorism, I talked about colorism and how at the age of 8, my ideas began to form about colorism, and how to this day I still have some issues within colorism, light skin and dark skin, when you and I have talked about this. Yeah. And my sister and I have talked about this. And, when I talk to Caucasian people, whether they're colleagues, they always say, you're always talking about that. So I talked about how I had read something in Jet magazine that affected, my perception of colorism. And so that is my favorite show,
And just to interject here, it's your first show being about Kobe Bryant. I recently listened to some of his previous NBA players, and they discussed how magnificent of a player, not just on the field, but off the court.
Sure.
And he would be the first one at practice and the last one to leave.
Yeah.
And so it just reminds me of you with reflections and your purpose and your drive to keep going. And so I think that's great.
And I actually, in reading about him and finding out more, he was very dedicated to basketball. And, he gave back to inner cities and communities and children and boys. And I like to see that, when he told them, it's more than just the money and the big houses, but you got to love this game. And, I still need to see that documentary, but I believe it won an award at the Oscars. And so just to see that, he was retiring and moving on to coaching and teaching and doing other things in entertainment, and then for his life to be gone like that, that was really, really, really sad. And so, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant and his daughter. But to answer the second part of your question, my least favorite show, how dare you ask me least favorite? There is no least favorite, though they're all my babies. But there was a particular show that I had done over at the Graham Wayne Center, and I wasn't feeling well that day. But I did not want to cancel, this production. And, so I can still remember what I had on. And I think I'd ate something the night before, but I just didn't feel well. And you could tell in my face, and then that chair I was sitting in was probably meant for someone that's a size 2, and so, but because I didn't feel well, that I trooped on, but I just didn't feel well. But I love them all. I love them all in their own way.
Well, thank you for that. If you could interview any one person, living or deceased, whom would that be and why?
Come on.
Should I guess
know who that would
Whitney
be.
Houston?
You know what? I knew everybody would think that. If I could interview, if it could be 2 people, who would I be?
Okay, we'll take 2 people.
2 people. Oh, wow. It would be someone historical. She's historical in pop culture, but, oh, wow. I have been on documentaries, this documentary kick, watching documentaries about, today I was watching something on Marian Anderson, but probably Dr. Martin Luther King. I love Dr. King. I love his vision. I watched a documentary on him not too long ago. The FBI was, on his case and, when many, many years ago. But the fact that, he was right there in the middle of history, civil rights, although civil rights, the movement didn't start with him. It, had, prior to him, for years and years, Blacks and other people of color have been fighting for their civil rights. But I would just ask him, why did you feel led, to put yourself, to insert yourself? You could have done it from the pulpit, why, and I would have wanted to know about him, growing up, before the Montgomery bus boycott, and he was at that time 25. I wanted to know about his childhood and teenage years. And, so he would definitely, I'd love to, it's so funny because on our side of the family, the Russell side, one of our female relatives dated his wife's brother at one time. One of our great aunts dated his wife's brother. And so back in Marion, Alabama, and so Marion and Uniontown, our family, descends from Marion and Uniontown. So, but yeah, definitely Dr. King. And then we know the second one.
We do know the second one.
And who is the second one, Janisha?
Whitney Houston.
Oh boy, now than ever, after 10 years, I would have asked her, how did you survive that madness? With the people, the press, they loved you for so many years and then you were vilified and how, and still was able to put out good work, and be the good person you were. And the press, I tell you, paints this portrait. And a lot of times we feed into good or bad what those people are like, but we don't know day to day what they're like outside, of the press. And I've read certain things and watched certain things. She, in some ways, was really different, than her public persona, and um, so, I would just, I would ask about the music and all of that, but just as a person, I would have wanted to get to know her as a person. And I think one day I'm gonna, I've compiled some stuff over the years. I'm gonna write something. I don't know if it'll be a small book or a tribute in a magazine, but I'm going to do that because I've been a fan for a long time.
Oh, I know. And both are absolutely remarkable people. And I'm sure both would be flattered that you chose them. And so, what is the most flattering compliment that someone has ever given you, Mr. Brewer?
That's a good segue, your use of flattering. Well, I remember years ago, I was about 27 years old and I was working for an agency here in Fort Wayne, a home health care agency, and there was a lady that I was working with, and she had came up to me one day, and no, I think we were working. We were working the same case one day, and she said that she'd been watching me, and she would see me different places, and in other words, she was saying, I wonder why this nice looking man, I always see him, he's, by himself and such and such. And that was really the first time. And she said, I had a nice smile and such. But I was like, I didn't think in terms that people watched you like that. And I don't know where I've been, where I was, the last, even then at that time, but people do watch you, when they form opinions about you, when certainly I watch, well, I wouldn't say I watch people, but I've formed opinions but I just didn't think I'd be the object. And so that was very surprising that she, said that. And then, people always compliment and say you have a nice smile, or a lot of ladies say that. And, you have a nice bald head, you wear bald very well. And, I've gotten used to being bald. There are some days, I miss my fade, but I don't miss going to the barber shop. I certainly don't miss paying, that money. And I don't miss sitting in the barber shop and waiting, so, but people say that I, have nice teeth and a nice smile and, so yeah, that's, those are the compliments I use. Oh, and that I dress. A lot of people say that when I do dress up, I dress very well.
And I was going to say, yes, you do. As long as I've known you, you have always dressed very nice. You always look very well and very well put together. And so you dress for success. And with
Yes,
that,
yes.
what does success look like to you?
What does success look like to me? Peace of mind. As I age, peace of mind, health and strength, great health and strength, taking care of yourself, physically and mentally and emotionally. Oprah said one time success was, what did she say? A baked potato and someone to share it with. And I love baked potatoes. I love Red Lobster's baked potatoes. But I would say, just being, financially comfortable, not rich or, but comfortable and, having a nice car and, a home, a decent home and, doing something you love, doing something that you love and, having family, that support you and love you, and then sharing it with someone that gets you, but then most of all having that relationship with God, because he is the source of our strength. And so all of those things, are what success look like to me in Puerto Rico. I'm going to Puerto Rico, so very, very soon. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And so you mentioned being comfortable. If you were given $1 million, how would you spend it?
Oh boy. Oh boy. I would have traveled all over the world seeing Whitney if she was living. No, I would have. I missed that concert here in '91. But if I had $1 million, I would right now. I would actually. I'd buy some land and I'd build a nice house. I'd build a house, a decent house, and I'd buy a nice car, and um, I would, my family, my mom, and I would, give some towards, but um, I travel. I should have joined the military because I could have seen the world. I would have been a nurse and I would have traveled, and so I would travel Spain and Italy and Greece and all the places I've read about. And on television you see celebrities talking about they shot on location in those places, and so. Yeah, and I'd invest. I would invest, but I actually, if I had $1 million, what the viewers don't know, a lot of people know my love of pop culture and family and such and such, but I'm actually, with my master's degree, I'm gonna human services. I'm going to actually get my human services degree, and I'd love to have a facility for people that are trying to get back on their feet, women and children with no place to go, orphans, babies that are unwanted, children. I love children, and I'd love to have a place where they would feel safe, and where they're not judged, and so I would, I'd buy a building, and I help take care of people. That's very important to me, and so um, that's what I do, with that money.
That's wonderful. And cousin, I just want to thank you for having me on Reflections, and I want to congratulate you with everything that you've done. And I wish you the best. I know that you will continue to be successful. You have a great foundation, and the sky is the limit. And may
Yes.
God continue to bless you.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, for coming on to interview me. I had some choices, but I knew that you know me, you really you know me, and we go back
We do.
like Bud and Rudy, and many years. And I was telling someone recently, I have been able to share things with you that I know didn't go anywhere, and so I thank you for coming on, and
You're
you knew how
welcome.
much this meant to me, and you did a great job,
Thank you.
very professional. And so, with that being said, I thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to this episode of Reflections hosted by Deontay Brewer, but today my cousin, Mrs. Shanisha Warfield, guest hosted. And I hope today you all learned something, about me, that you can take and that you understand, why I do this show and why it means so much to me. And also, hopefully, you found my the other side of me lighthearted and comical, and that you could take away from that as well. So, as I always say, thank you for listening and thank you for watching and supporting. And always to remember to be bold, be you, be blessed. God bless.